Hello, everybody. It's a real honor to have today a legend of guitar in our studios today. So for this occasion, we arranged a small interview with him, and he agreed also to play something for us. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Vinnie Moore. Vinnie, welcome.
Thank you, man.
Real honor to have you here.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time, and it's always amazing to have artists like you and visiting us in the studios, and I'm very glad that you're here just to share some of your story and your music, of course. Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much.
So let's start with something really easy, I know. How did you start with your music journey? Was there any event, band, or artist that triggered your interest in music?
Well, I grew up into all the typical rock bands that everybody else my age, were into at the time. And that started with the Beatles and, of course, Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin, Queen. And, before that, it was just like AM radio. My parents used to always have the radio on, and I just loved hearing music and song. I knew early on that music and songs moved me, made me feel something from an early age. And then at some point, I decided I wanted to get a guitar. And because I was into bands like Purple with Blackmore and Zeppelin with Page and Queen with Brian May, so it was kind of a natural thing that I'd want to play guitar. So one year I got one for Christmas and didn't do a whole lot of it. I kind of underestimated how difficult it would be. I kind of envisioned myself playing leads in a week or two. And in fact, I remember hearing a song on the radio and thinking, I'll be able to play that lead in a week or two. And then I actually got the guitar in my hand. I was like, whoa, this is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. But anyway, at a certain point, I think after a year and a half, I got obsessed with it. And it's pretty much all I wanted to do. And it's pretty much been that way ever since. So yeah, just growing up with rock music, the Beatles, all the classic stuff. That was basically guitar-oriented, so naturally I wanted to play guitar.
Yeah, that's cool. But let's talk also about sound. I mean, you are one of the most iconic guitarists, and your tone is always highly recognizable, Can you give us some hints about how to develop a unique and personal sound, and of course, how you did that?
Man, I wish I had a tangible answer for that, but I really don't know the answer to that. I mean, I play a lot, and I think it's something that just kind of comes with time naturally, that I don't know how you really try or practice or make an attempt to do that. It's the guys who really have that going on for me are guys like Carlos Santana, of course, Van Halen, Ritchie Blackmore, Jeff Beck. I remember going to see Jeff Beck in concert once. In fact, he was opening for Carlos Santana, and the lights went down. Beck was getting ready to come out, and I heard one note. It's maybe he was testing his amp to make sure it's working, and he went, and it sounded so Jeff Beck by that one note. I was blown away already. And Carlos also has that thing. He holds the pick a certain way, and his pick attack has something to do with it. So I think there are physical things, that kind of are part of that getting your own sound that are unique to everybody. Also the way you dial in your amp, and maybe the way you finger the fretboard and your touch. All those elements have something to do with it, but I think a lot of it comes from somewhere else too, from inside. And it's hard to define that thing. And, I'm amazed by guys like Beck and Santana that they have such a unique voice. And, it's something I strive for, but, I don't know how you get there. So sorry. Doesn't really help.
Yeah, I got your point. I see. But anyway, I've been listening to your music for so many years now, and your songs are always singable, and your themes go straight to the point. How did you develop this kind of ability? I mean, this lyricism, you know?
I was taking lessons when I was a kid, and my teacher started showing me scales and, of course, chords. And at a certain point, I'd get a little cheap tape cassette recorder, and I'd just start making up like chord progressions, maybe simple things like C major 7th to D minor 7th. And I'd practice my C major scale. And that's how I learned to improvise, and it's how I learned my scales, and it's how I came up with a lot of different licks. And I found that for whatever reason, when I'd make a chord progression, even if it was only 2 chords, you know, sometimes it could be 4 or whatever, but I'd always have an A and a B section. So I'd maybe, as a B section, go to F major 7th, E minor 7th, and then maybe end it and go back to the first progression again. So from a very early age, and I don't know the reason why, but I was a very A-B guy, like 2 parts, probably because I couldn't remember any more than that. And I'd just record it, and I'd solo over it, you know, and then I'd come up with like a second rhythm and record that. And before long, on my little cassette, I had maybe 30 minutes, 45 minutes worth of different progressions, and I just hit play every day and just improvise over those progressions, you know. And that was kind of a big part of my practice, just improvising. And there were times where I also put on the radio, and I would just like improvise with songs on the radio as well. But anyway, I think that early thing of, you know, those chord progressions kind of developed into songwriting at a certain point, you know. It started there pretty simply with, you know, 2-part songs. And, you know, I just kind of started to develop it and been writing songs for I don't know how many decades now. And, you know, when people say, how do you write? I still really don't know the answer, you know. You just kind of have a guitar in your hand and hope that something comes to you. You feel inspired. I don't really try to write, because if I sit down and I try to write, I often don't come up with anything. It's more when I'm just kind of playing and I play something and it's like, oh, wow, that's pretty cool. Where's my, used to be a mini Walkman back in the day, but now it's the cell phone. You know, I record it right away or I'll forget it. And it usually starts that way with songs. And once I have a song idea, usually the floodgates open and I start coming up with related ideas, and you know, often in my head, actually, sometimes playing guitar, but sometimes if I have that first idea, I'll kind of walk away from guitar and hear something in my head, and then I have to go back and figure it out on guitar and record it before I forget it. So yeah, so I don't know any way to really explain how to do it other than just do it, you know, just play and feel it, and eventually the muse is going to come to you.
Yeah, that's very cool. And Vinnie, I have a question from our young people in the Musicoff Young project, and they are very young musicians, very fond of guitar heroes like you know. And Jordan is the name. He said, what is your approach to alternate picking? You have a style that from the outside looks very tense and yet has an impressive precision and attack. What's your approach?
Thanks, Jordan. Well, basically, I go down and then I go up. That's it. No, I remember, of course, when you first start playing guitar, you just kind of want to play all downstrokes. And at a certain point, my teacher told me, you know, you got to be more efficient and alternate patterns with your picking. And, it, you know, I started out with like stupid little drills and exercises and, you know, the chromatic stuff. Really boring, and then I would do things on one string like, just like put a bunch of different exercises like that together, and that really helped develop my picking and also getting the left and right hand in sync with one another. And I didn't really have a plan. I mean, I know some people pick from the wrist, like Al Di Meola, and some guys use more of the arm. And I didn't really decide. It's just kind of something that evolved naturally. And I find like I don't pay a whole lot of attention to it. And when I do, I notice that my hand's doing all kinds of weird things. Sometimes sometimes using more of the wrist, sometimes moving in different weird ways. So I've never really analyzed it, and I try to ignore it because if I think about it, it just gets confusing. And sometimes ignorance is bliss. But basically, it's all going to come to you naturally, I think. I don't know if I practice a lot with using just my wrist, if I could acquire the ability to, that technique to be good at that, master it, I'm not even sure. Maybe it's like our own unique individual anatomy, not even sure. But yeah, I just do whatever works for me and, just kind of follow your path and do what works best for you. But the only thing I could add to that is when you play, try to relax. I noticed that when sometimes, especially if I'm a little nervous going on stage or whatever, or I'm a little too hyped up, I'll play harder than I need to. And you don't play as good that way, You just kind of relax and gentle, I think, is more efficient and easier on your muscles. And, it's more effortless that way. So relax.
Yeah, that's a cool tip. Okay, I guess we have some spot for gear talking. I mean, you have been playing so many instruments and amps and pedals and stuff in your career. Fancy sharing some of your gear secrets with our friends?
Okay, sure. In the studio at home, I've been using my Marshall JMP Mark II 100 watt. And, I bought it in 1985. And it sort of just sat around for years in my studio. I don't know why. And then sometime when I was recording a UFO record, maybe in 2008 or something, I decided to plug it in and give it a try. And it's like, wow, this thing sounds great, man. It's just been sitting there. It hasn't even been powered on in more than at least 10 years. Why haven't I been using this amp? And I just kind of fell in love with it. And I find that I'm setting it to a crunchy setting, like the preamp isn't going up real high, maybe 6, and I'm using a pedal in front of it, not a hardcore distortion, but, just like a little overdrive to hit the input of the amp harder and make it sing. And that's really been working for me in the studio. I don't like to take it on the road for whatever reason. It doesn't have an effects loop, so that wouldn't be good for live stuff. And, I'm afraid it might get damaged or whatever. So I keep it in the studio. And then live, I've just been using like a Marshall JCM 2000 amp for a while. I've used Ingalls. That sound really good. I've had a dual rectifier that I've used in the studio. And I think I've taken that out on the road a couple times. And that sounds really good. And so that's it for amps. And for about a year and a half now, I've been with Kramer guitars. And this is Kramer Pacer. And it's funny, my first guitar with a Floyd Rose back in 1982 was a Kramer Pacer. And at that point, I had been playing a Stratocaster. And, of course, the Floyd Rose came out, and Eddie was using it. And I was an Eddie freak. So I tried to route out my old Strat. The first thing I did was routed it out for a humbucker, only I didn't have a router, so it was a hammer and a chisel, and I kind of tore it apart a little bit. But anyway, I got the humbucker in there, so I could be more like Eddie, of course. And then I wanted the Floyd, and that just looked too difficult. And then Kramer came out with a Pacer, and it had the Floyd included, so it's like, oh, wow, this is perfect. So I got the Pacer, and it was my main guitar for maybe 2 years. In fact, I did so much practicing on that guitar, the exercises and stuff that I just showed you, that my nail from rubbing like this when I play, ate through the clear, and then went through the red, and then there was gold. It went through the gold, and then there was black underneath. So you can see 4 layers of paint that have been scraped off from doing this over and over again. And so it's kind of, surreal to kind of gone full circle and to be working with the guys now as they're like relaunching the company. And happy with these guitars and pedals. In the studio, I've been using a KOT, which is the Analog Man King of Tone. I have a bunch of different pedals that I try here and there for different things. I have a pedal called the Archer, made by J Rocket. And, of course, wah-wahs, and what else do I use? TC Electronic Sub and Up, which is really cool for a higher octave and a lower octave. Then I have this full-tone fuzz that's really cool, which I initially bought for a higher octave fuzz kind of thing, and I found that that's cool, but if you could turn the higher octave off and it's just the fuzz, and it's amazing. I used it quite a lot on my new record, actually, and I'm spacing on the name of it. It's blue, and I think it's modeled after the old Octavia.
Yeah, that's it. That's a lot of stuff. But you got more or less the same tone from the very beginning. I mean, the sound is more Vinnie Moore than the amp or the guitar you have been changing, isn't it?
I think so, which sometimes is a curse and sometimes a blessing, because sometimes I want to go for a different sound, and it's like, why can't I shed this sound and get something different? And it could be frustrating if I have something in my head and I'm going for a particular thing for a particular song. I'll try different guitars and different pedals, and I'll be recording, and it ends up sounding really similar a lot of times. And it's like, why is that happening? So it sometimes can be frustrating, but I guess, in a lot of ways, it's a good thing.
Yeah, it is. It is. 100%, I guess. Okay, I know you already answered to this, but I wish if you could answer maybe with a specific example, maybe with one of your songs, because the question is, how do you compose a new song from scratch? I mean, do you start from a harmonic context or from a groove or some melody you have in mind? If you have a process, and you said you don't have a standard process for this kind of stuff.
Right.
But anyway, do you remember composing one of your songs? If you can tell us how you did that, for a specific example.
Okay. Yeah, I get this kind of question a lot. Like, what do you start with, a rhythm or a melody? And I do know the answer to that. It can be both. It could be just like totally a rhythm and a groove. And sometimes, it's more I hear a melody. But if you hear a melody, there's got to be chords there too, because to me, a melody doesn't really exist without hearing the chords you're playing over, playing it over. So, so sometimes it's a melody with chords, and sometimes it's just a rhythm. Sometimes it's, the groove-oriented kind of thing. And, happens in many different ways. Sometimes I could be sitting around just noodling around on the guitar and watching TV, and, something comes to me then while I'm not even trying, which is kind of how this one came about. I was watching a football game. Well, you call it football. We call it football. That's soccer for you guys, but you soccer. Also call it football. So American football, the gridiron, just started kind of playing. Yeah, so, bits of inspiration come from unexpected sources, or when you're doing things and you're not trying to write. That's how it happens for me anyway. And then once I get the idea and I get into the studio and start laying it down with a drum groove, then it starts to kind of grow from there. And sometimes my problem is it grows too much and I have too many parts for one song. And I've even split ideas and come up with 2 songs from one song in the past. because you can't put everything in the one song unless you're Dream Theater and Vinnie Moore on the Maze record. You know, you end up with an 8 or 9 minute long song, and it's like, wait a minute, I think I have 2 songs here.
Yeah, it's more a suit than a suite instead of just a song if you go over 10 minutes, you know? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's it. Okay. Vinnie, you are a musician of many influences, and we find it hard to imagine anything you haven't already played in your career. But is there something that has remained a dream for you? I mean, is there something that Vinnie Moore still has to learn as a musician?
I think you never stop learning, and you know, if you do, you might as well not play. I think music is so infinite, so vast, and so big that you can keep exploring and discovering new things. You know, it's like space. You just it's so vast, you can discover things forever. And that's what keeps me excited about music. There's so many different styles, so many different approaches, and that's what keeps it exciting and fascinating, and you know, makes me want to keep playing and keep writing.
Okay. Yeah, that's a cool answer indeed. Vinnie, what are your plans for the futures? I mean, in terms of new album releases and tours. Also, because tomorrow it starts a new tour here in Europe, isn't it?
Tomorrow I'll be on stage at Let It Beer in Rome, and you know, this will be my first time on stage in more than 2 years. The last show I did was on a cruise ship with UFO, and that was 2 years ago, and we were in the middle of our farewell tour, and then COVID hit, unfortunately, and kind of grounded everyone. And I think I've done 1 guitar clinic back in February in Indiana, and that's the only time I've been on stage. So this is going to be the first time I'm on stage with the band and the first tour. And, you know, I'm kind of wondering, like, how do I do this? Like, you know, what are my moves? I might have to stand in front of a mirror and remember my moves, like rock pose 101.
Yeah, but it's something you never forget, like going to the bicycle.
Yeah, it's like riding a bicycle, and hopefully, it's all there without you thinking about it. I mean, I've never really thought about it anyway, to be honest. I just kind of go up there and try to play the songs as best I can. And I'm excited about doing this tour in Europe. And after that, I think we have like 20 shows at least. After that, I go home for a couple weeks, and I'm back out with UFO over in Europe again, doing some summer festivals and some other dates as well. And I just finished a new solo record. We've just mastered it, so that is done. That's coming soon on the horizon. I don't know the name of it yet because there's like 4 or 5 different titles I'm contemplating. I never can decide on things to the very last minute. So, that's going to be coming out. I don't have a date yet, but it's going to be in the summer sometime.
Yeah, cool. I'm looking forward to hear that new album.
Thanks very much, man. Thank you.
Vinnie, how do you relate to the most recent technology and the massive use of social media? And how do you feel they had an impact on the music industry in the last 15, 20 years at least?
It's a really good thing to have and to be able to utilize and to promote yourself, but I struggle with it a little bit because I just want to play and write songs and make records, and things have become, social media has become so important. Like, there's a gazillion people doing videos of them playing or singing. I mean, I go on my Instagram account and just scroll down, and I can't even watch the videos because there are so many of them everywhere. And everybody's concerned on how many, hits you get, how many people have watched your story. And in a way, it's a great thing, but at the same time, it's like, oh man, And there's so many different mediums, there's this app and that app. And what am I going to do? Sit around uploading videos all day on different apps? I just want to play. And so in that way, I'm an old school kind of guy. And I mean, I think it's great for unknown players to have this outlet to just show people what they're doing. I mean, I wish I had it when I was first coming up, it's unbelievable. But at the same time, I mean, the market, I just think things are so saturated. There's so much of the same thing. And, how many hits you get online, what does it actually translate to in the physical world? I mean, I don't know. But I'm just an old-fashioned guy. So, what do I know?
Yeah, the things were very different. I mean, in the 80s and the 90s. I mean, what you did as a musician wasn't something related to how you promote that. I mean, in a social media like today, isn't it?
Right. I mean, you tried to write songs, become the best player you could become, and try to get a record deal, and then make a record and go out on tour. And now it's how many hits can you get on some social platform? And what's really funny is that there's this whole thing where everybody's gotten into this deal where they look into the camera and smile. It makes me laugh. I mean, I know that's what you got to do nowadays, but I could never be the guy who's playing and going, it's just, I don't feel natural that way. I mean, I feel it's more about the playing and not that kind of thing. But I really got a kick out of watching some of the videos of, girls and guys just staring into the camera hey.
Yeah, it was like the small video we used to start this interview. It was a joke, of course. You just trying to do all the harmonics with the face.
Right, exactly.
Face, yeah. Yeah, that's it. Okay, Vinnie, this is my last question. It may seem very easy, but having advices from people that made a real career as a musicians and composers like you for this very long time, it's always crucial, because I believe, and we believe at Musicoff, that you cannot give what you don't have. I mean, if you don't have any experience, you cannot give any advice. But internet now and social media especially are full of people giving away stuff and giving away tips and tricks without having any experience. But when we meet people like you, we really like to have some advice for musicians, young and old, new beginners, whatever. If you have any tips, any real tip, any real advice, would be very welcome from our community.
Sit in front of a mirror with your guitar and learn to play and smile into the camera. Actually, what's funny is in 1985, I did the soundtrack for a Pepsi commercial in Los Angeles. And I was also up for the part of being in the commercial. And I remember them saying, the production company, go back to your hotel room and just look in front of the mirror and practice your facial expressions, so you can get closer to the faces you're making. And of course, I stood in front of the mirror for about 5 seconds and went, nah, I can't do that, man. So yeah, all joking aside, I guess looking into the camera is quite important, isn't it? My advice is to always be passionate about what you're doing and love what you're doing. And I think if you do that, all the other things are going to kind of fall into place naturally. Just love the music, practice a lot, play with friends, share what you know, show them things, they'll show you things, It's a community kind of thing. Play with other people, jam, and just write songs and just kind of go with the flow and let it happen. And, as long as you're passionate and you just have the love for it, it's all going to kind of fall into place without you really thinking too much about it. And then, of course, you need to record your stuff, which is easy to do nowadays with DAWs. I'm using Cubase. Back in the day, if you told me there was going to be a software
Was
you know,
like a
program
dream,
like
you know?
Cubase or Pro Tools or whatever, it would have been like alien technology. It was like I spent every dollar I had to buy a Tascam 4-track cassette machine, and that's how I learned to write songs on that thing. Only 4 tracks, and yeah. So I mean, the technology is totally there nowadays. That's a total no-brainer. And yeah, I just write and express yourself and just follow your path naturally.
Yeah, thank you very much, Vinnie. It's
Thank
always
you.
amazing to meet people like you, and especially you today. I've been fond with your music for all my life, so it's been an honor to have you here. And I wish you the best of luck for this tour, and of course for the new records coming out soon.
Grazie. Same to you. Best of luck. And thanks for having me here today. It's awesome.
Thanks a lot. Bye bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.